Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honorable Leader of the Opposition once, not too long ago, made reference to the fact that I had chosen on 2 occasions to step back from the cabinet in order to focus on my constituency. He made reference to that, and he said that as a result, that when I came in here, I often seemed very unhappy. Now, a man, sir, that cannot tell the difference between when a woman has been left happy and unhappy has all kinds of problems, so I would not try to add to those. But I am glad that he came in today to give us some jokes to lift my spirits. And I am helpful, I am thankful, sir, for the effort in that regard. But I have to address 1 or 2 of the things that caused some laughter among us. And the reason that we laugh, sir, is not because these things we take lightly. It's not because at all that we, unlike the last Democratic Labour Party administration, apply no discipline to the matters of finance and economic resilience of this country. To the contrary, this government absolutely does. So let me clarify that the cancellation of the loan for urban renewal in Barbados, and I have to address these matters, sir, as a former minister responsible for economic affairs and investment that inherited a mess of an investment loan portfolio. That's the truth. A nightmare on Bay Street. It really was. From a government that that left on the table 5 development loans unexecuted, either because they could not meet the counterpart financing, and I'll come to that in a minute, or simply because they didn't know how to execute the loan. The IDB loan for housing and urban renewal that was meant to address Greenfield and Garden Land and Cat's Castle and Island View was meant to be $80 million, $60 million from the bank and $20 million in counterpart financing. 47 million of that was canceled, not because of any wonderful decision making by a government, because they could not get it spent. They couldn't meet the counterpart financing for that, nor for the CDB loan for the upgrade of Constitution River that I had the pleasure of seeing executed in Halls Road once I became the MP and the Minister for Economic Affairs and Investment. Because these matters, sir, often when you go to have to execute a loan, the institution will tell you, well, you need to have some skin in the game. We need some counterpart financing from you, either in cash or in kind, so that we know that it matters to you to execute this and that this loan and the project will be realized. So that was, for the avoidance of doubt, that loan was not canceled because of good economic financial decision making. The people take back their money because it was not being spent. And they felt that if the government, the Democratic Labour Party government at the time kept it, then they wasn't sure whether they would get it back. That is why the loan was cancelled. And it was part of a portfolio of about almost $191 million, if I recall correctly, and if I don't, the honourable members who now occupy the portfolio will correct me if and when they speak. About 130 or so of that from 5 capital works projects, if I recall, was left unspent. And so we had this happening, sir, in a context where a former Minister of Finance in that administration declared in this honorable place that he doesn't know what low-income housing is, because housing is expensive. That was the level of cluelessness that the people of Barbados had to contend with in the context of urban renewal. But sorry, go further, because I will confess to this honorable chamber today that the greatest challenge that we had as a Ministry of Finance, Economic Affairs and Investment, starting in 2018, was being able to convince the multilateral institutions, the financial institutions, that they should lend money to us again for housing and urban renewal, as a result of the poor economic management of those loans that they had granted in the past. Government is indeed a continuum, and the people of Barbados pay the price for the bad decision-making of a previous Democratic Labour Party government. And the irony of it is that a man that purports to lead an institution, to lead a political party, that would want to lead a country, if he could finally choose a seat from which to run, does not have the understanding that this is how public finance works. But the reason that this agreement, that this loan financing is so significant, is that it had proven very difficult, and we tried. It had proven very difficult. Policy-based lending, which is what we call budget support, whereby the monies come in to shore up the foreign reserves, that kind of lending and other kinds of investment loans. A lot of the loan facilities that the ministers responsible for finance and for economic affairs and investment recently were able to get over the line in terms of debt for climate swaps and so on, those kinds of things came more easily. But the truth is that the international lending community did not have confidence that Barbados would be able to execute investment loans for housing and urban renewal. So the fact that today this kind of loan can come here is a sign of progress, because it has been extreme, and this is not just for Barbados, in general as well. It is a harder task to get over the line, to be able to secure investment loans for this kind of activity. And so I really thank the honourable member for the laugh, but I had to cease the laughter to be able to bring some sense, common sense, to the history and some clarity and some truth to the issues regarding those capital works loans. So, sir, the efforts at urban renewal that this project is meant to address are obviously critical. I was pleased to hear the member for Christchurch East Central clarify, and I suspect that is because he knew the question was coming, that this phase one that seeks to address Chapman Lane and its suburbs, which lay between President Kennedy Road, Westbury Road, Baxter's Road, Tudor Street, Princess Alice Highway, and Prescott Boulevard, that those are the areas to be addressed in phase one. I will confess, I read that with some consternation. And I am assuming that phase two, which he very likely in passing mentioned would deal with Halls Road and the surrounding areas, would be coming, would be critical. Sir, this is one Barbados. It is certainly one St. Michael. And I often describe parts of St. Michael South Central as the greater Bridgetown area. So I am not trying to separate myself from the noble city of Bridgetown. But I hope we realize that urban renewal in an important capital city, albeit with a perhaps declining population of residents, that urban renewal cannot just be focused in that area. And I will further confess that it is stark and very apparent the difference in investment, in recent investment, between the infrastructure in the city and the infrastructure in the neighborhoods just next to the city. To the extent that areas like Tweedside Road and Halls Road, Carrington Village, Bannister Land, Delamere Land, to the extent that these are areas with historic areas of this country, areas that have regrettably had to experience certain levels of underinvestment, particularly in a previous administration, suggests to me that projects such as this have to be expanded. And I know my good friend, the Honourable Member for the City of Bridgetown, will stand to defend, as he must. But I do not believe that we can take the Bridgetown area or to take this project, and when we talk about urban renewal, feel that we're just talking about town. Because to the extent that the areas that I've just outlined are intricately connected to Bridgetown, but also are at the core of urban Barbados, I would assume that phase 2 is following on the heels of this phase 1. Sir, I would further suggest that, the management of these kinds of activities, it's a lot of balls in the air. You're talking about housing, you're talking about water and sanitation and sewage. When we were able to carry out the upliftment of the Constitution River area, the canal, one of the things we said to the residents there was that we would also work to upgrade the sewage systems, that we would be able to do some independent kinds of systems for the homes that they occupy, and that we would also pay some attention to their housing as well as to their businesses. My colleagues in here must be tired of hearing me talk about the unmet project that is the Halls Road Commercial Village. And the fact that we have to do better at being able to forecast, estimate, and manage the cost of infrastructure such that we can deliver to people. It is not sufficient to be able to say, we would love to be able to build this thing that you have clearly expressed that you need, that we have agreed is important, that we have agreed must be executed. But year after year after year, we are not satisfied with the pricing. We are not satisfied with the costing. And it suggests to me, having moved the project from the Ministry of Youth to the Urban Development Commission to all around the place to see who could manage to execute it at the lowest cost, it suggests to me that perhaps what we might want to turn our minds to is the idea of a central government project management and execution entity. So that when we are negotiating rates, so that when we are looking at pricing, we are looking from a central place. Such that, because we know that some ministries are not works ministries, some ministries are not project management ministries, yet we expect them to be able to execute works when really that is not their capacity. And then we wonder why projects that are dedicated to urban renewal are lagging. And so I renew the call to have centralized project management and execution of major projects such that people in urban Barbados would be able to benefit. But sir, there needs to be further alignment in some of our policy. And I suspect that sometimes we have this artificial separation. I saw recently that there was a discussion about certain trade issues, and the fact that a commitment was made, and I know that as a former Minister of Industry, I have certain other kinds of constituents that will be listening very carefully to what I'm about to say. But there were utterances made recently with respect to the production and the importation of paint. And the declaration made that soon CARICOM would be taking steps to make sure that external competitors, foreign competitors who are producing paint products, would not be able to export into the CARICOM economic region their products unless there were certain increased duties or tariffs paid. And I know that we have to do our best to ensure that our local manufacturers are able to enjoy as much of an even playing field as they can. We also, though, need to understand the knock-on effects of certain economic and trade decisions. We need to consider and understand what is driving the consumer, what is driving the industry that is responsible for construction, what is driving these individuals to choose the external competitor. And we're talking about paint. And what might be the repercussions of causing the local sector, remember, it is not just the paint manufacturing sector that is implicated here. It is also any sector that buys and uses paint. What are the pricing knockoffs? What is the reason for the selections that are being made? And I'll give an example. It could be, and it has been reported, that there are certain kinds of paints and primers, for example, that last longer. If it is the case that certain paints and primers last longer, a person who is erecting new construction or choosing to repaint their home might choose one of those because ultimately that is a lower lifetime cost to them and a lower lifetime cost to the sector. In short, you may be, in trying to keep a promise to one sector, undermining the attempts of another sector to be able to have the lower margins that we as a government call for them to have. Now we say that to the members of the private sector, to the companies, to the construction companies, to the contractors, that we want them to stay within certain margins because government is not a piggy bank and we can't afford to spend so much money on works and construction. And then we take action that might drive up the cost of inputs. Either drive up the cost of inputs directly by making them pay more for certain products that the customers choose, or drive up the cost of the cost indirectly by causing a person to maintain their property more often, to invest in the things that would maintain the property more often, meaning that overall you're paying more. I just raise these things, sir, because of the concern that while we secure the financing, and I'll tell you, the member for Christchurch is central, and I know well that securing financing does not necessarily mean that you're going to see the benefits home at you. So we secure the financing, but then when it comes to the execution, we have to take particular care. We have to take particular care, number one, to align policies, to align practices. So for example, that if we say, yes, we want to make sure that we are investing in works in the urban communities, does that align with our trade policy? Does that align with the fact that we're still having issues with the clearance of containers at the port? And that there remains a certain level of unpredictability between whether a container that has been greenlit will still need to face increased overtime costs on behalf of customs officers to inspect, even though it has been greenlit. And I say these things because I'm encouraging us to align the things that we're doing. All of these things contribute to whether the project activities that are outlined, with which one could find no fault in this project document, whether we will actually be able to do them and do them in time to mean something to people. Because that's something else that we have to highlight. The timing with which these works are executed makes a difference in people's lives. So the other point I want to make has to do with another area of policy alignment, and really of project management. And it has to do with making sure that not only do we have the financial wherewithal to execute the project, we have the personnel to execute the projects, we have the policy alignment to execute the project, and we have the equipment to execute the projects. I seem to recall that with previous projects, and one in particular, I believe it was the CAF sector-wide approach program for roads and culverts and related works. And what we had said at that time was that there would be equipment packages that had to accompany these loans. And why? Because there were too many times, and we saw it before, there were too many times where we said, yes, we got the money to do the thing. We have the personnel. Do we have the equipment? I heard the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East make reference earlier to the fact that there were 6 pothole patching trucks on order. And I was happy to hear the update, because the fact is that it causes great consternation for me to learn, if I call a depot, as I have recently, to ask some questions about what is happening to the reports made in Clapham of potholes, to the emergency reports made, because even though Fords Road clearly needs to be repaved, at the very least, can we have the deep, I mean, sir, your soul is stirred when you drop in those particular 2 potholes at the corner, going across from Valerie to crossing Scotts Gap, going over to Fords Road. And anybody hearing my voice know exactly the 2 holes I mean. I could probably picture them. I see a red graffiti spray paint around them. I'm not sure if that's meant to say avoid. But when I make those reports and I hear there is no pothole patching truck, the pothole patching truck for St. Michael is out, it suggests to me that there's a misalignment then. Because we have to line up all the things. We got the money, but I can't put the asphalt on my back and carry it down the road. So it is a matter of, you see, when we bring these things here, they look like they make sense. But then we got to do the fine work of going behind all of this to see, what do we have, what do we need, and what do we have, and how long is it going to take to get there? And sir, regrettably, I experience it every day. Because regrettably, again, we have systems where we know that a part might fail. This part is going to last 4 years. Oh my goodness. So we buy the part now, and we don't buy another one to put down at least 3 years out, order it, so that by the time we deal with all of the supply chain issues and all of the issues with containers stuck here and there, that we estimate enough time to get the second order of the thing in, and we keep it in the basement. We do that, right? We do that in our households. We put down the thing because we know that we're going to need it later, so that we don't have to run out in the middle of the night in our pajamas, or worse yet, go without it. And so, what you hear from me, sir, is an indication that, the best laid plans need some extra attention. And while we deal with some of these, I would say vexing issues, because the truth is that the water and sanitation issues that affect us in Barbados are not easily solved. They're not easily solved. But this is a Barbados Labour Party government that has a face it and fix it attitude. Of that, I am sure. So it means then that for those other things, that while we do some of this very difficult work, and while the member for Christchurch East Central and his team work on some of the very innovative financial instruments that they have been able to work on, that we also need to address the very simple things that we can fix. I do not know why a sign for Baycroft Gap should be on the road. And let me tell you why this matters, sir. I come from Sinclair Road in Haggett Hall. And one time, I was going back up there to visit my dad, passed through one Saturday morning, the sign is down. Not only is it down, it mashed up. Can't read the word. I don't know how other people feel, right? But when I come from a place, when I identify with a place, when I live in a place, and the message being sent to me is, I ain't even care enough about you and your place to pick up the sign off the ground. What does that say to the same young people that we are complaining have no regard for their communities? Do we? Do we? Royal Court up the road in Britain's Hill, same thing. Signs just falling on the ground as if people don't walk about. It is a slap in the face of the people in those communities, and especially the young people who are happy to tell you where they come from. How many people in this honorable place, or my colleagues, tired of hearing that I come from Sinclair Road? Tired of hearing that I went to Belmont Primary School? I identify with those places. When people identify with a place and you do not show them, demonstrate to them that you are willing to invest in it, forget about these issues of matters of social cohesion and all these fancy things that we like to stand up in here and talk about. Low-hanging fruit. And I dare say that we did not need $34.2 million US for that. Because that should be in the regular maintenance of the responsible ministry. Because the same way that I see that sign on the ground, somebody else has to see it. We don't walk about. We don't walk about. And the same way that I feel something in the pit of my stomach, on behalf of those people who come from that gap, the rest don't feel something in the pit of their stomach when you see that. And so, sir, I support these efforts tremendously. I know, as does the member for Christchurch East Central, as does now the member for St. Philip West, that coming to these negotiated agreements is not easy. So the member for Christchurch South, the honorable leader of the opposition, could stand up in here and guess about how easy it is to go away and get some money and come back. As if, when I was small, I used to read about the faraway tree and the land of take what you want. So he must take the guy of faraway tree and you climb the tree and you go and pick up $35 million for urban renewal. In an environment where multilateral institutions are barely lending for that anymore, because they're telling countries this should be a part of your core financing. But when a country has been left to decay, as certain parts of Barbados were, you can't do it all from your core finance. You can't do it all from your central budget. You have to be able to find the resources to bring the place up to speed. So the second part of these resources that relate to the polyclinics and primary care in Barbados, I will not say much about, except to say this. A similar concept applies. We know, I believe evidence has shown, that if we invest more, yes, we need the infrastructure, we need the buildings, we need to upgrade the facilities, but we also need to invest in the people inside those facilities. And we also need to invest in the knowledge and the information. I regret that I will sound like a stuck record on these matters, because the less we invest in primary healthcare, the more we're going to have to invest at a tertiary level. And the fact is that the rates of severe illness from the kinds of things that we can prevent are outstripping the public finances. And it is happening in many countries around the world. Put simply, I am saying the following. A country will find it very difficult to keep up with spending money on treatment when things have gone too far. It will find it far easier to be able to invest at the primary level, to be able to make sure, as I'm seeing that this project does, to make sure that there are expanded dental facilities. So I grew up going to Lady Mead, it was at the time, Sir Winston Scott Polyclinic. We called it Lady Mead. And I still remember the two dental hygienists I used to go to. It probably wasn't the best idea that in exchange for us behaving at the dentist, remember they used to carry us to Purity and buy a jar buff. But at least that was only a couple times a year. But investing at that level meant that there was less money to spend on care, on treatment later on. And I hear all of the things that we're saying about what is needed at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and the fact that people expect to get top of the line surgery and other interventions for illness. I hear that, I understand. And I think that it is noble for any country to target universal tertiary health care. However, when we take the pie and we cut it, when we look at the competing cases, when we look at the competing levels of intervention, it is a very difficult thing to ask a CEO of a hospital or a doctor in a hospital, well, where are you going to spend the money? On this particular manifestation of an NCD or that one? On this particular manifestation of smoking for 20 years or another manifestation of cancer or of a different kind of cancer? These are the things that are uncomfortable questions. But the fact is that unless we change the model of healthcare to front-load investment at the primary time, at the level of the polyclinic, to teach people how to eat, how much to eat, what not to eat, how much to move, how much you need to sleep, the fact that alcohol is poison and is poisoning our bodies. I see certain heads snap up in here and look at me. But the evidence is showing that. I'm not judging your choices, but the evidence is showing that. They used to say, how many ever drinks a week? No, they say there is nothing redeeming in alcohol consumption. There is nothing. I know I want the member that looking at me to stop looking at me, or I might have to make reference to who they are. There's nothing. We're killing ourselves with that. So talk straight to the people and let them know that these are the habits that mean that you may find yourself in a line at a hospital in 20 years looking for treatment. Because many other people took the decisions that you took. Or you could go a different route and make other choices. Because there will also be people who find themselves there through no doing of their own. And our public finances have to make sure to cover those particular cases. So we are all competing for healthcare, and I believe that this kind of project that seeks to invest at the primary level is critical, along with the other kinds of messages that I just made reference to, because it means that people will take care of themselves. And this is not just a financial issue for the government. It's not just about decreasing what we have to spend at the hospital on dialysis and on other things. It's also about quality of life. Making sure that while people are alive, they're able to enjoy the work they're able to enjoy their children, they're able to enjoy the environment, and they're able to really live and have that sense of well-being that we committed to be able to improve. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I felt that coming. And I close by saying that I support this project that focuses on urban renewal and investments in primary health care. I appeal to us, and I say us because it's all of us, to make sure that we set up ourselves to do the fine work to make this real in people's lives. And where we are able to move now, before the first drawdown of money, where we're able to pick up $50,000 that's already sitting in the ministry and fix the signs on the road and fix the little things that make people feel as if you're looking in on them and caring about them, that we do that. And with those few words, sir, I'm obliged to you.